Hello, everyone! Tonight's story will make you question what family really means. What if the people you love the most, the ones you sacrifice everything for, one day look you in the eye and say, "You're not one of us anymore"? This is the story of Olivia Reed, a daughter who worked her whole life to make her parents proud, only to be betrayed in the most humiliating way possible. But what they didn't know was that the girl they underestimated had already learned how to fight back, silently and perfectly. Let's start from the beginning. Before the betrayal, before the note, before the revenge. Back when Olivia was still called the perfect daughter, Olivia grew up in a quiet town, where her family's small house was filled with both love and tension. Her parents, Laura and Charles Reed, had always dreamed big but never had enough. Olivia became their hope, their stability. At 16, she was already working part-time, paying bills her parents couldn't. At 25, she was the only one bringing steady money home. And by 30, she'd paid off their debts and bought them a new car, while her brother, Nathan, lived freely, spending what wasn't even his. Her parents always smiled when Nathan entered the room. But when Olivia came home tired from work, they only asked, "Can you help us with the next payment?" No thank you, no pride, just expectation. Still, Olivia believed this was love, that family was about giving. Until one night, her mother called, voice full of excitement. "Olivia, Nathan's engagement is next month. We're planning a huge dinner. You'll help us, right?" Of course she said yes. She always did. She paid for the catering, the venue deposit, even the custom lights her mother wanted, all quietly, all with a smile. But deep down, something was changing. A strange feeling she'd never felt before, a whisper inside her saying, "What if they don't see you at all?" And soon, that whisper would become a storm. Sometimes, betrayal doesn't come as a knife in the dark. It comes wrapped in smiles, laughter, and fancy invitations. Olivia was about to learn that the hardest goodbyes aren't shouted. They're whispered behind champagne glasses. The weeks leading up to her brother Nathan's engagement dinner were a blur. Olivia handled everything, the flower arrangements, the catering, even the photographer deposit. Her parents didn't ask how she managed it. They just assumed she would. Because that's what Olivia always did, fix everything quietly. Her mother called every night, talking excitedly about the guest list and dresses. "Oh, Nathan wants a gold theme," she said once. "You don't mind covering the extra decorations, do you? We'll pay you back soon." Of course, they never did. Olivia smiled through the exhaustion. She even bought herself a new dress, something elegant but simple. A soft lavender gown that made her feel seen for the first time in years. She told herself, "It's just one night. Maybe they'll notice me this time." The evening arrived. The grand hotel shimmered with lights. Guests laughed, cameras flashed, and music floated through the air. Olivia walked in, holding the invitation she'd helped design. Her name printed right under, family. But the moment she approached the entrance, something felt wrong. The event manager looked uneasy. He whispered something to the guard, who turned toward her and said softly, "I'm sorry, miss. Your name isn't on the list." Olivia blinked. That can't be right. "I'm Nathan's sister." He hesitated, then stepped aside as her mother appeared perfectly dressed, smiling stiffly. "Olivia," she said, voice tight, "there must have been a mistake. This is a private dinner. Maybe you should come tomorrow." Guests began to stare. Laughter died down. Her father avoided eye contact. Nathan's fiancé looked away. And that's when Olivia realized this wasn't a mistake. This was planned. Her mother's next words cut deeper than any knife. "You shouldn't be here, Olivia. You weren't invited." For a moment, Olivia stood frozen, surrounded by people she'd loved and supported her whole life, now looking at her like a stranger. The security guard shifted awkwardly. "Ma'am, please." Olivia nodded slowly, her voice calm but trembling. Of course, she whispered, "I understand." And as she walked away from the golden lights into the cold night air, she didn't cry. She only thought one thing: they'll remember this silence. Some betrayals are loud, but the cruelest ones, they happen quietly in public when everyone's watching and no one dares to speak. That night, when Olivia turned away from the glowing hotel doors, her heels clicked against the marble floor like echoes of every sacrifice she had ever made. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just kept walking past the cars, past the laughter, past the music that had once made her feel like she belonged. Outside, the wind was cold. It carried the faint sound of her family's laughter, a sound that used to bring her peace, but now it felt like fire. She took out her phone. Dozens of messages lit the screen, all work emails, payment confirmations, bills she had covered that week. And as she scrolled, she realized almost every dollar that paid for that private dinner had come from her. Her heart sank. They hadn't just forgotten her, they'd used her. Hours later, she sat in her car under a flickering streetlight, staring at the lavender dress she'd chosen with so much hope. It suddenly looked like a costume, a symbol of someone who still believed she mattered. Her phone buzzed again, a message from her mother. "Don't be upset. You know how these events are. We just didn't want to make things awkward." Olivia read it twice. Then a small, bitter smile crossed her face. "Awkward," she whispered. They called betrayal awkward. That night, she drove home in silence. No music, no tears. But inside her mind, something was shifting, something calm, cold, and deliberate. She walked into her apartment and sat down at her desk. For years, she had kept every receipt, every payment confirmation, every document proving what she'd done for her family. From their mortgage payments to the engagement dinner deposit, it was all there. Every single proof of how much they owed her. Olivia stared at the stack of papers. Her breathing slowed. Her jaw tightened. "They think I'll come back." Like always, she said quietly, but not this time. That night, she didn't sleep. She made lists, methodical, organized, emotionless. Her family had taken her kindness for weakness. Now she would take back everything they took for granted. And when the lights went out at the hotel hours later, her mother glanced at the empty chair that was supposed to be Olivia's. For the first time, there was an uncomfortable silence in the room, because deep down, they all felt it. The calm before the storm. They say silence can be louder than words, and Olivia's silence was about to echo through every corner of her family's life. The morning after that humiliating night, the world felt strangely still. No calls, no texts. For the first time in years, Olivia didn't check her family group chat. She didn't send money. She didn't answer when her mother called to say, "Don't take it personally." She simply disappeared. Days turned into weeks. Her family assumed she'd cool off, that she'd forgive them again, like she always did. But what they didn't realize was that Olivia wasn't angry anymore. She was focused. She began by reviewing her accounts, every automatic payment, every linked card, every recurring transfer she'd set up to support her parents, the mortgage in her name, the utilities billed through her account, even her brother's fancy new car, partially financed by her credit. Her hands didn't shake as she clicked cancel, one after another. She closed every door they'd quietly walked through for years. She wasn't doing it out of revenge, not yet. This was clarity, a silent declaration. You treated me like I didn't exist, so now I don't. At first, nothing happened. Her mother's texts were cheerful. Her father sent group photos of family dinners, pretending everything was fine. But as the days passed, the tone changed. "Olivia, the power bill didn't go through. Did you change something? Your father's account shows a missing payment. Can you check? Nathan's car loan is showing an alert. Is there a problem?" Olivia read every message, then locked her phone and went back to work. For once, their problems weren't her responsibility. One evening, as she sat in her quiet apartment, a strange calm washed over her. The same calm that comes right before a storm breaks. Because she knew what was coming, the panic, the realization, the regret. Her silence was not revenge. It was justice. And justice, she thought, doesn't need to shout. It just needs time. The next morning, Olivia opened her inbox to see a dozen unread messages, all from her parents. Subject lines like urgent, please call, and we need to talk. Her lips curled into a faint smile. For years, she had begged for their attention. Now, they were begging for hers. But she wasn't ready to answer. Not yet. Because the silence had only just begun to speak. When you build your life on someone else's kindness, the day they stop giving, everything begins to fall apart. Weeks had passed since Olivia's quiet disappearance. Her family was beginning to feel it, not her absence, but the consequences of their own greed. It started small. The electricity at her parents' home was cut off. Her mother blamed the company, yelling at customer service until they quietly mentioned, "Ma'am, the auto-pay account linked to this bill has been closed." Her father grew restless. His credit card kept declining. Nathan's car was repossessed right in front of his fiancée's house. Within days, panic replaced pride. Olivia's mother called everyone she could, relatives, friends, even Olivia's office. But no one knew where she was. She wasn't avoiding them out of anger. She was simply done. Inside her small apartment, Olivia sat by the window, sipping tea, watching rain slide down the glass. Her phone buzzed, messages piling up like confessions. "Olivia, why are you doing this? Your father's credit score dropped. Please fix it." Nathan's so embarrassed, people are talking. She stared at the screen for a moment, then locked her phone again. For years, she'd been the fixer, the problem solver, the quiet backbone of the family. Now they were forced to stand on their own, and they were crumbling. One afternoon, her father showed up at her office unannounced. He looked older, smaller somehow. "Olivia," he began, voice trembling. "You've made your point. We were wrong. But can't you just..." She stopped him gently. "Dad," she said softly, "I'm not trying to make a point. I'm just taking my life back." He didn't know what to say. For the first time, he saw her not as his daughter, but as a woman who had finally realized her worth. That night, her mother sent one last desperate message. "We're sorry, Olivia. Can we please talk?" Olivia read it, and for the first time, tears filled her eyes. Not because of guilt, but because she finally understood something. Her silence wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about freedom. Meanwhile, back at her parents' house, the golden glow of wealth and status had faded. Bills stacked on the kitchen counter. Nathan's engagement had been called off. And every time the phone rang, fear followed. They had called Olivia selfish, ungrateful, cold. But in truth, she had been the only thing keeping them warm. And now, that warmth was gone. Sometimes silence breaks not with shouting, but with truth. And when Olivia finally decided to speak, her words didn't sound angry, they sounded final. It had been nearly 2 months since the night of the private dinner. In that time, her family's perfect life had completely unraveled. The house mortgage defaulted, credit cards frozen, reputation shattered. And still, they hadn't learned what the real loss was. Until one rainy afternoon, when Olivia's doorbell rang. She opened the door to find her mother standing there, soaked, trembling, eyes red from crying. Behind her was Nathan, his usual arrogance gone, replaced by a quiet shame. "Olivia," her mother whispered, "please, can we talk?" Olivia stepped aside. She didn't smile. She didn't frown. She simply said, "Sit down." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then her father's voice cracked the silence. "We never meant to hurt you, Olivia. We just..." She cut in softly. "You just what, Dad? Forgot I existed. Used my money to fund your image. or told the world your daughter wasn't invited to her own family's celebration. Her words weren't shouted, but they hit harder than any scream ever could. Her mother wiped her tears. "We thought you'd understand. You've always been so strong." Olivia looked down, shaking her head. "That's the problem. You all thought my strength was endless, that I'd never break, that I'd always come running when you called." She stood up and faced them, voice steady but full of pain. "I paid for your comfort, your dinners, your cars, not because I had to, but because I wanted to see you happy. And when you humiliated me, I stayed quiet. You didn't just take my money. You took my love for granted." Nathan lowered his eyes. "We were wrong, Olivia. I was wrong." Olivia sighed deeply. "I know," she said, "but this isn't about being right or wrong anymore. It's about learning." Her mother reached out, desperate. "So what now? Are we strangers to you?" Olivia paused. The rain outside grew louder, as if waiting for her answer. Finally, she whispered, "No, Mom, you're still my family. But now, I'm my own person too. I'm not your safety net anymore." Tears welled in her mother's eyes. Her father looked defeated. Nathan quietly said, "We didn't realize how much we needed you until you were gone." Olivia nodded slowly. "That's the thing about people like me," she said. "You only notice us when we stop saving you." They left that evening, not forgiven, not condemned, just silent. For the first time, Olivia felt light. But as she closed the door, one question lingered in her heart. Can broken families ever really heal? Revenge doesn't always look like destruction. Sometimes it looks like peace, the kind that comes after years of noise, guilt, and heartbreak. After her family left that rainy evening, Olivia stood alone in her apartment, staring out the window. For the first time, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt clean. She thought about everything, the years she spent holding her family together, the humiliation at the hotel door, the nights she cried quietly so no one would hear. And now, after all the pain, she realized something powerful. She didn't want revenge anymore. She wanted freedom. The next morning, she went for a walk through the park. The air was cold but gentle. Children laughed. Couples held hands, and for once, Olivia didn't feel invisible. She smiled, a real smile, not the polite one she used to wear at family dinners. That week, she started therapy. Not because she was broken, but because she wanted to understand herself again. The version of her that existed before the disappointment. She began cooking for herself, redecorating her small apartment, listening to music she once loved but stopped playing because it was too loud for the house. Slowly, the weight began to lift. Meanwhile, her parents tried to rebuild their lives. Her mother took a part-time job. Her father learned to manage bills without help. Nathan apologized again, this time not through text, but in person. He said, "I don't expect forgiveness, Olivia, but thank you for making me grow up." She believed him, because this time his voice didn't sound entitled. It sounded human. One evening, she received a small package at her door. Inside was a framed photo of their family from years ago. On the back, her mother had written, "We lost our way. You helped us find it again." Olivia held it close. Tears fell, but they were different now, not from pain, but release. She whispered, "I forgive you. But more importantly, I forgive myself for staying too long where I was never truly seen." That night, she sat on her balcony, city lights glowing below, heart finally steady. She didn't need to prove her worth anymore. She had already done that by walking away. And that was her real revenge, not making them suffer, but teaching them to understand the value of love, respect, and silence. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing you can say to those who hurt you is nothing at all. Every story has an ending, but not all endings are about revenge. Some are about peace. The kind you find when you finally stop running after people who never looked back. Months passed since that stormy night when Olivia's family had come to her door. Life had changed in quiet, unexpected ways. Her parents moved to a smaller home, humbler, simpler, but filled with something new, honesty. Nathan started working full-time, earning his own money instead of borrowing hers. They still called sometimes, but the tone was different now, softer, respectful, almost careful. Olivia no longer flinched when her phone buzzed. She no longer carried guilt for saying no. One Sunday morning, she visited her parents, not out of obligation, but choice. When her mother opened the door, there was no tension, no awkwardness, just a long, tearful hug that said everything words couldn't. They ate together, not in a grand dining hall or under golden chandeliers, but in a small, cozy kitchen. No fancy table settings, no expensive wine, just laughter, warmth, and truth. Her father raised his cup of coffee and said, "You taught us more by walking away than you ever could by staying." Olivia smiled. "I just learned to stop fixing things that weren't mine to fix." Later, as she drove home, the sunset painted the sky in shades of gold and rose. For the first time in years, she felt light, not because life was perfect, but because she finally understood what peace truly meant. She realized that revenge hadn't healed her, self-respect had. That the moment she stopped trying to earn love, she finally started to feel it from herself. And maybe that was the lesson hidden in all the pain. You can't make people see your worth, but you can walk away until they learn to open their eyes. As her car disappeared into the fading evening light, Olivia whispered softly, almost to herself, "I didn't lose my family. I just found myself." And with that, her story didn't end in hate or anger. It ended in peace. Because sometimes the best revenge is simply moving on.